You are listening to an episode of Megan is Not a Parent, but today's episode is brought to you by Positive Parenting Class Pass. And Positive Parenting Class Pass is my 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. You can start today at bekindcoaching.com/classpass. In today's episode, we will be chatting about the qualities and characteristics of the insecure parent. This is episode 2 of our 8-episode stretch, digging into the qualities of a secure attachment. So I invite you to get cozy, grab your notebook, and let's dig in. Again, just like last episode, if you haven't listened to last episode yet, I encourage you to go there first and listen to all of the traits of the secure parent, because we are building off of that in this episode. But I wanted to start again with that foundation, just reading into what is attachment theory, why is this work important for us to focus on, and how does this start to build the foundation of our relationship with our children. So strong relationships is the relationship that dances the dance between rupture and repair. And when we're dancing this dance together, when we're working in building this ebb and flow of the relationship together, what this does is that it influences the quality of our attachment. And the quality of attachment bond affects the way that your child develops mentally, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially. It's the strength of that core relationship with their parents, with you, that will be the main predictor of how well your child will do both in school and life. Anywhere where there will be stress and conflict and building of character, values, and confidence, that's what this foundation will come to play. And investing in that foundation is so key so that it stays with them in all of their future relationships. And at the core of a secure attachment, the child is looking for a safe base, meaning a safe place to land and a safe place to launch. Your sense of bonding with your child, meaning the way that you perceive that relationship, is not the same as the way that the child views that relationship. It can be the same, but it doesn't necessarily mean. And this is something I feel like I talked about this in Raising Respectful Kids inside a video too. We talk about how the attachment bond that you feel with your child starts as soon as you know of their existence, as soon as you know that they're coming into your home. That could be as soon as you got a call, as soon as you took a test, as soon as you got information, as soon as you knew that that child was coming into your life. That's when your bond with the child, and maybe even beforehand with the planning of creating the space to welcome in the child. That's when our bond with the child started. But for the child, that starts at birth when they have consciousness. And so when we're starting to think about this, adults really start to come preloaded with all of these expectations and all of these thoughts and all of these dreams that they almost project onto the child before the child's even born. I can think about when my sisters were pregnant and they'd be like, oh, they're going to be a soccer player, or wow, this person's really shy, right? We're talking and we're characterizing a fetus in the womb, meaning that we are, as adults, conscious, living, breathing beings. We're now projecting all of our thoughts, jokes, insights, characteristics, hopes, wishes, and dreams onto this child that hasn't even been born yet. And so when we're thinking about attachment, it's really important to shift away from the adult's perspective and shift into the child's perspective. And when we're doing this shift, we're now taking it away from like, well, am I being a safe, seeing, soothing, secure caregiver? I can always validate my own behavior. So I would say yes, 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 yes. But instead, let's start to become aware of, does the child have the sense of safety? Does the child feel seen, heard, and understood by their parents? Does the child feel soothed? And is the child feeling secure that their caregiver is a secure place to land and launch? And when we're thinking about the work that we're all doing here and the work that you're doing in your relationships with your child, I will always, always, always advocate for investing the time in building that solid foundation. And the solid foundations that I'm talking about is investing in showing up in ways that your child feels supported. When a child feels supported and a child feels safe, then positive, good, calm behavior will be the outcome. When the child feels secure, not are you showing up doing the things, is that the child's experience. When we're thinking about being a parent and being a kind and firm parent, we're investing in identifying our parenting styles. What's going on underneath the foundation of it? Are you, as the parent, are you feeling balanced? Are you feeling kind and firm? Are you building your own inner security? Are you building your confidence so that you can start to navigate these situations with firm security in self? And then together, are you forming a secure relationship? That's where our attachment comes in. Are we showing up in ways that have built the foundation of feeling safe to bring your struggles and feeling confident to launch back into the world? Attachment is defined as that relationship that gives you that inner sense of security. So, as the child, am I feeling safe with my parents to bring anything to them? Am I feeling seen by my parents? Like they understand my inner world and my inner struggles, my inner hopes and dreams and wishes, my wants, my needs? Am I feeling soothed by my parent? When I'm feeling stress, am I able to go to them and feel a sense of calm and relief? And then am I feeling secure? Am I feeling as if they are a safe place to land and a safe place to launch? When we're thinking about this, that inner sense of security comes from emotional regulation. And regulation is like that internal thermostat. It's helping managing incoming stimulation. So it could be internal, external, whatever your body is sensing. It's helping regulate that like the thermostat and helping regulate that through our energy release. As a reminder, regulation means it's that ebb and flow, it's that curve of up into stress and down back into calm. And that's a stress cycle when we enter into stress and then we're able to calm back down. And that window of feeling regulated is the window of tolerance. So that window of tolerance comes back up and will go up and it will come down. And so regulation is being able to move easily from high and low states back into calmness and contentment. A sense of dysregulation is when that window is very narrow or very small, when there are things that will cue you into crisis quickly or cue you into shutdown quickly. When that sense of calm and contentment is very narrow, that tends to indicate that you have a small window of tolerance, which means that you may spend a lot of your time in dysregulation. And children, they go through that often, and they require an adult who has a wide window of tolerance, who is able to stay in a pretty calm and confident state, be that person that helps regulate with them. So when the child is stressed, when we're talking about co-regulation is when the child is stressed, the adult is able to stay calm, not just force calm, not just white knuckle calm, but is able to have a sense of calm and peace in their body and then share that calm. And we do that through co-regulation. We're connecting and we're helping soothe the child through their stress. Along with co-regulation, meaning helping regulate together, we can also have co-dysregulation. And that could be when we either, as the adult, take on the child's stress, when we're feeling calm and cool, collected, and the child is stressed out and they bring their stress to us and then it stresses us out. So think about when you're maybe in the kitchen cooking dinner and you're calm, cool, collected, you're doing your thing, and then your child runs in crying. They bring in their stress, and then that brings up your stress, and then you're like, get out of the kitchen, what are you doing, why is this happening, right? This is a co-dysregulation, meaning The child is stressed, the adult was calm, the child comes in, and now the adult is stressed. And now we're reconciling that stress to try to get back to a sense of calm. It can also happen when the child is calm, meaning like maybe they're playing independent play. I see this at the park often when a child's like in the sandbox and they're just playing and they're just doing their thing and they're just kind of like being by themselves. And the adult says, hey, shouldn't you be going and playing with your friend? Hey, look, your friend's here. Why don't you go share the toy with them, right? The adult is maybe in that sense of stress and they bring the stress onto the child. This child was cool, calm, collected. They were doing their own thing and they were good. And then the adult is feeling overwhelmed and we share it with the child and pings the child up. That's when they'll start to throw the toy or they'll try to run away or they'll hide or maybe they'll stick out their tongue. And what happens is then we share our own sense of stress with the child. Again, co-dysregulation, where now we are both in a state of dysregulation. It's important to remember that as social mammals, we need the connection of another to help soothe our nervous system. That's natural and that's normal. In childhood, we start to create a working model, meaning a workbook, a sense of process here on how to soothe our nervous system. And it all comes down to trust. Can we trust ourselves and can we trust others? So we're looking at attachment theory, we're looking at the outcomes of attachment or the attachment styles, as it's called in adulthood. We can start to think about this level of trust. Do I trust myself and do I trust others? If I trust myself, if I have concrete inner values, if I'm grounded in confidence, if I'm feeling safe, seen, soothed, and secure with myself, and I feel that from others around me, then I'm going to start to have a secure style. I can start to do that dance of rupture and repair with confidence. It doesn't mean that it's comfortable. It doesn't mean that it's fun. It doesn't mean that we enjoy it, but we have a very even keeled dance in this sense of security. If we do not have that inner trust, if we do not feel our inner sense of values or our inner connection or our inner confidence, however, but we do trust it with others, we're like, oh, well, I need to call the doctor will know, rather than the doctor giving me informed information so that I can make an informed decision. I'm going to outsource this to someone else. Tell me what to do and I'll go do it. Right? It's coming from a not having trust in myself, but having trust in others. Like others know what's best for me. That means I'm going to constantly be doubting myself and looking for others to tell me what to do. If I have trust in myself, if I know, like I'm good, I got it, I have calm values, and I know what's right for me, and I know what's good for me, and I know what I want to do. If I have like that strong inner trust, and yet I don't have trust in others, meaning like I'm always side-eyeing other people, like, I don't know what they're up to. I don't know what's going on with them. They're always dropping the ball. I can't ask for help because no one's going to be there to help me. When we start to feel that way, then we're going to start to feel avoidant. We're going to start to feel not secure and avoidant. I think I skipped over the last one where we have not trust in self, but trust in others is not secure, anxious. And this one is not secure, avoidant, where we're going to avoid things because we have an inner trust, but we don't trust the others around us. And then the last quadrant of this attachment theory grid is not having inner trust and not having trust with others. So there's just a lack of trust. And that is categorized by not secure, disorganized, meaning I don't know when to ask for help. I don't know who to ask for help. I don't know what I should do. I'm just kind of like spiraling. And like sometimes I get it right and sometimes I get it wrong. And it's just kind of this unpredictable cycle. So we're looking at attachment theory. Those working models, and they're called working models so that we can start to change them, heal them, evolve them. We can start to do that through having secure relationships and working towards having secure relationships. And so that's what we are talking through inside of this 8 stretch, talking through attachment theory. We're breaking down each quality and looking at it from not only the child's impact, but also the parent's actions. So last episode, 528 is the secure parent. Today, we're talking 529, we're talking about the insecure parent. And next week, we're talking about being the safe parent. So, security, this sense of security, or when we're talking about being a secure caregiver, security is based on predictability. So, the questions that are being asked here are for the parent's POV. We're asking, does the child have a sense of safety to land and launch like a trampoline? Like a trampoline that's not going to move, it's going to give consistent bouncing. I'm going to know that I can jump and I know how high I'm going to jump. I know the force I need to give because that trampoline below me is predictable and stable. So that's what the adult is asking. Like, does the child have a sense of safety to land and launch from me? Meaning they can bring me their stress. I'm going to work through the stress and then they're going to launch and take off. Sometimes, especially when we're talking about permissive parenting styles is seen as like having a soft pillow to land on, where we want the child to land on us and that they're comforted, but then we fail to launch them again, right? We fail to like go out and try it again, or let's try this again. And we just see it as like, let's just be needed. It comes into like, well, I get my value from being needed. So as long as I'm a safe pillow to land, that's all my children need. They need soft, they need gentle, they need care. And when that happens, then the child misses out on that opportunity of regulating themselves and going back out. So that's why I use the visual of a trampoline. You're supposed to visualize it as landing and launching, making sure that they're both together. And when we're seeing this visual now from the other side, from the child's side, the child is asking, is my parent and caregiver a safe base for me to land and launch from? Can I bring my stress and struggles to them? And then can I launch from them? Do I feel like they're going to cheer me on? Like they're going to let me go? They're going to like launch me back into the world? And so we're thinking about security. Security is that the adult is going to be this stable, safe base. And the child now can start to take risks because they know that they can jump higher, they can jump faster, they can jump wider, they can jump narrower, they have more space to learn and grow and explore because they know that their safe base is there. It's predictable. If the caregiver is not predictable, meaning it's always changing, it's going to change the size of the bouncy space, it's going to change where it's located, then the child will have a hard time establishing predictability. The child's not going to know, is this a good time or is this a bad time? Is mom going to say yes or is mom going to say no? Is this going to be a time where they yell or is this going to be a time where they give in? I'm now, as the child, not able to make predictable risks because I don't know where you, as the caregiver, are going to be. So it's when the caregiver is always moving. When the caregiver is moving, if there's no consistency in the movements, if it's not like, oh, dad had a hard meeting today, so I know that he's going to be extra grumpy. If there's no consistency in it, then again, the child has a hard time predicting and feeling secure in being able, again, to take those risks, to make those jumps, to make those moments happen, because I don't know how to predict it. I don't know when I have high needs as the child and you have a low bandwidth as the adult. So it makes it hard for me to create that sense of safe base with my caregiver if they're always moving and inconsistent. And then finally, how does the caregiver recover? So after that rupture has happened, after that mistake has happened, what is the recovery like? Does the parent just go absent? Like they're just like, well, that was what it was, and now I'm not going to talk anymore. Or are they working towards doing that repair work, learning the lessons, finding support, and doing the work to reestablish that safe base? There's always a sense of perfection that comes up, like, oh, if I make a mistake, then I'm going to hurt their attachment. And that's not the case. Attachment is built from that rupture and recovery when mistakes are made and we come back and heal and grow back together. So inside of today's episode, we're going to be going through the 6 traits of the insecure parent. And what I want you to know here before we go in is I'm going to call back episode 5.3, which is the 3 assumptions I make of all parents. And those 3 assumptions is that I assume your worth and goodness. I assume that you are a good parent. also in this work, I assume that you love your child. Behavior is never attached. Parent behavior, child behavior, it's never attached to how much love is there and present. That's nothing I ever question. And why I include that is because I started to notice on the majority of my parenting consults and the members of my parenting group, they would start to say things like, well, I just love them so much. Well, don't worry. I mean, they're just such a good kid. I love them so much. Right. And to me, that was like, ding, they felt insecure that maybe I was thinking that maybe I thought that they weren't good, or maybe I was thinking that they didn't love each other. And so that's an assumption that is inside of all of my work. The other thing I'm always assuming is that you are trying. I always assume effort. It is very hard to be around a child and not exert any effort. I'm, though, curious and more interested in identifying the quality of that work, the quality of the tools, the quality of the effort. A quality of attachment is not connected to how much you love your child or how much you're trying. Again, it's connected to the quality of the tools and strategies and methods that we are using. And in positive parenting, it creates positive impact on the development of the child and their skills and the development of your relationship together. And so that's why it's important to go into this podcast with an open mind, with a gentle mind, with lots of self-compassion, because you might start to see yourself in some of these traits. And if you do, I want you to know that it is okay. It is okay. It is a call in. It's a saying, hey, I have done this. I may have been creating this outcome, and now I want to become empowered and make new decisions. And we make new decisions by becoming aware through the stage of awareness, which that's what this is. Then we step into steps of education, which inside of this episode and inside of all these episodes, I'm connecting the classes that I teach and the work that I do connected to why. Why is this important? Why did I value making this class? Why is this work so important? We're attaching and validating, hey, when I do this class, I'm now investing in becoming that secure caregiver. And that work is there so that you can start to take practice. So now when we become aware of our tools, we're now educated in new tools. Now I can start to practice those tools, just like in everything I do, the awareness, education, and practice. Now I can start to take action on showing up differently. Brain break moment. All right. I know that I can go deep way fast. So let's just take a pause here to take a deep breath in and let it out. And listen while I let you know that this episode is brought to you by me, Megan, and my Positive Parenting Class Pass. Positive Parenting Class Pass are 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. Those classes include Positive Parenting 101, which is a class that is just designed to give you the first steps in what positive parenting is and what it is not. Second class is Emotional Validation. In this class, we dig into how can we show up to have your child feel seen and heard in their lived experience. The third class is Setting Boundaries, all about communicating, enforcing, and allowing testing of your secure and consistent and firm boundaries. The fourth class is a class called Ending Entitlement. Inside of this class, we dig into how we are showing up using tools of entitlement and how we can start to release those tools and begin practicing tools of empowerment and choice. And we know that what we put down, they're going to pick up. The fifth class is a class all about natural consequences. This is a class that gets very clear, and you'll walk away knowing what an imposed consequence is, what a logical consequence is, and most importantly, how to begin utilizing natural consequences so your children begin learning from their lived experience. And the final class is a class all about apologizing. I like to say that connection is the most skipped over step and recovery is the least utilized step. So in that step, you'll start to learn how to show up and use impactful and effective apologies so that your child knows that you see them and hear them and care about them. If you are looking to begin your journey today, then I highly encourage you go to bekindcoaching.com/classpass and dig into the classes starting today. As my free gift, you will receive Raising Respectful Kids, which is my 3-part video series all about how to stop focusing on adding on more decorations to your child and to you and to your relationship, and instead starting to reinforce and build a solid and secure foundation together. I can't wait to hear all of your amazing wins from the steps that you take inside of Positive Parenting ClassPass. All right, ready to get back to our episode? Before we get back, let's take one more deep breath together. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And let's go. So the 6 traits of an insecure parent that we're going to go and talk down is moving boundaries. An insecure parent is someone who is constantly moving boundaries. An insecure parent has inconsistent follow through. An insecure parent has unpredictable responses to stress. They are emotionally invalidating. They lack understanding and empathy. And they start making decisions for children. If you notice, these are just the inverse of the secure parent traits. And we're going to connect these all together. So the first trait of an insecure parent is moving boundaries. And when I pulled this slide from the boundary setting class of Positive Parenting ClassPass, I ground and root into what boundaries are. Boundaries are not controlling someone else. Boundaries are not about someone else's behavior. Boundaries are what you allow in for yourself, what you allow in and what you give to others. So when we're thinking about boundaries, we're thinking about how much time will I accept and how much time do I have to give? We're going to think about touch. We're going to think about what are the signs that I'm getting touched out? What are the signs that I need space for my body? We're going to think about energy. Can I invest my energy here? If I have a limited amount of bandwidth, do I have energy to devote here? We're thinking about intellectual boundaries, meaning they have information that I want. I'm going to ask them questions, and then they're either going to give me the answers or not. I'm going to be asked questions, and whether I'm going to give the information or not. Material boundaries are things like the things that are asked to borrow, like if your neighbor asks you to borrow their car, or it could be money, or it could be clothes. It could be something that has a material base to it. And then the final boundary that we go into is emotional. So what emotions, what spaces for emotional vulnerability do we feel safe giving? And when we think about these boundaries, we can start to think about, are these boundaries set like feathers, right? Where I say, oh, I only have a half hour, but then I stay like 2 hours, right? That's a sign that I have a very porous boundary around time. Maybe it's energy. Maybe it's like someone, I've got a lot going on at work. I've got a lot going on at home. I'm in the middle of this move and someone says, hey, can you volunteer? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll juggle all that too. That's a sign that I have a very porous or a boundary that's set in feathers around my energy bandwidth. And on the flip side, when we think about boundaries can also be like electric fences, where now if someone asks me to do something, I'm going to zap them so that I teach them to stop asking me, to teach them that it's bad to ask me, or that they shouldn't be asking me. And so when we think about boundaries that way, we start to think about, okay, are they neutral, calm, set, firm, or are they moving or zapping? Again, when we're more permissive with our boundaries, when we're more lax with our boundaries, those are boundaries that are always going to be moving. I talk about boundaries as in like the walls of the house. And think about if every day the walls of your house moved. And think about when your children ask you for snacks, when your children ask you when they're going on a vacation, when your children ask you if they can get a toy at Target, if your children ask you when their birthday is. All of these things, if those answers are always moving, where sometimes you have space and bandwidth to answer the question, but other times you don't, how are you communicating that? Are you becoming a feather where where they can ask and you give until you feel resentment? Or are you zapping them saying things like, you shouldn't be asking me that. You should know better. We've talked about this a million times. We're starting to feel, hey, are our boundaries kind and firm? Can I speak them with calmness, or am I moving into a always moving? Are they always changing? And if they're always changing, then it will be very challenging for the child to learn, when is it appropriate to ask? How is it appropriate to ask? How am I going to, what kind of response am I going to get from my caregiver if the movement is always moving? And the other side to this is the authoritarian style of boundaries, where we become like, I told you so, just listen to me. Because they become like an electric fence. I become like an authoritarian leader. I'm ruled by making, getting, forcing. I'm going to use things like punishments to get you to do the thing. I'm going to lean into controlling you. And again, these are signs that we have inconsistent boundaries, where those boundaries are always moving. Those boundaries are always flexible. And when, again, it's like the trampoline that's always moving. If the trampoline is always moving, then the child does not know how to jump, how far to jump, how high to jump, because when they land, they cannot predict that they are going to land in the same spot. And so that's why the trait of a secure parent is kind and firm boundaries, which requires us to invest time and energy into setting them, into exploring them, into communicating them, into allowing them to be tested. If this is new, thinking about routines and boundaries and agreements, think about homework, think about play dates, think about bedtime, morning time. These are all skills that are influenced heavily by boundaries and how clear, kind, and firm they are. It's something that I work with the members of Clear and Kind Parents to flesh out and build in accountability so that they are communicated, they are reinforced, and they are consistent. The second trait of an insecure parent is inconsistent follow-through. An inconsistent follow-through that pings up when someone comes to ask me and they say, well, I just don't know what to do when they do this. I don't know what to do when this happens. That pings to me that they're searching for a punishment. And we're thinking about the differences between punishments and consequences. The difference between a punishment and a consequence is how the adult responds to the child's mistake, the child's curiosity, and the child's learning. If you're leaning more down a punishment mindset, then the parent's aim is to create a sense of suffering so that the undesirable behavior will decrease. This is also called imposed consequences. This is a whole slide and a whole lesson inside of the class in Positive Parenting Class Pass called Natural Consequences. We can get very clear. We can suss out if we're going down the punishment route or if we're going down the consequence route. Inside of consequences and having a consequence-based mindset, the aim is to teach children a missing skill so that they can strengthen and do better. So is that learning how to communicate their own boundaries? Is that learning how to walk away? Is that learning how to become emotionally regulated with help? Is that skill recovery? Are they learning how to recover and repair their relationships? If we can lean into what skill we're working on, then we can start to go down the trajectory of consequence. Consequence just means outcome of. And there are positive consequences and there are negative consequences. Positive consequences are things that we enjoy and we want more of, right? The positive consequence of cleaning your room is keeping all your toys safe. The negative consequence of not cleaning your room is the liability that there may be broken toys. When I'm learning through consequences, I'm aligning myself up not to make the child suffer for not cleaning up or the child feel pain for not cleaning up, but the child to feel the consequence, the impact of that decision. Punishments are often unrelated to the circumstance too. That starts to create the impact of shame and humiliation. Punishments can also be counterproductive as they invite the child to focus their anger on the parents. Meaning, if your child is feeling punished, chances are they're going to start to say things like, I hate you, you're the worst. You're always so mean. Mean mommy, nah, 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 mean mommy. They're going to start to ping up this defense to you, like you did this pain for me, instead of understanding, like, oh, I did this. I had an impact here. I chose not to do this thing. We can start to see that when we flip it, when we start to show up not to create the suffering, but allowing the suffering and allowing the learning through those consequences, then we can start to learn and lean into taking accountability. Punishments also have 4 clear outcomes. And this is actually an episode, I forgot to highlight it here, an episode in season 1. It's pretty early on. It's the 4 outcomes of punishment. And the 4 outcomes are resentment, so the feeling of that's not fair, or I always have to do it. When you get that response back, it's like a flag to be like, ding, there's resentment pinging up. This child does not feel empowered. This child feels like they're being forced to do it. Another outcome is rebellion. So like, I'm going to do it anyways. I'm just going to do it when you're not looking, right? You're going to tell me to go do something or that I can't do something, and I'm just going to do it anyways. Ping back to Megan, like wearing shorts. My mom had this rule that it had to be 75 out to wear shorts. And so I would just wear shorts underneath my pants. And as soon as I got on the bus, I would take off the pants. That's me rebelling. I didn't feel part of this conversation. I felt that this was a rule that was being imposed on me without any help from me or any input from me. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll just figure out a way around this. My mom will never know. And she was never the wiser. The third outcome of punishment is revenge, and that's getting even. That's this belief that you hurt me, and so I will hurt you. And this starts to create revenge cycles. And so revenge cycles are when someone feels hurt and then they make the other person responsible for their hurt. And then that person pings back the hurt to them. And the clearest example of this is when a child is not listening to an authority figure, a parent or a teacher. The teacher and parent, the adult in that case, is feeling slighted. They're feeling like, poof, they need to be listening to me. I'm going to make them listen to me. And so they dole out a punishment. Either they take something away, or they put them in timeout, or they make a threat. And then the child's behavior escalates, meaning if they're putting in timeout, they either get up from timeout, or they color on the walls, or they destroy the toys in their room when they're sent to the room. It's an escalation, right? And then we come back and we see the big mess that they've made, or we see the destruction, and then we punish them more, and thus the cycle begins again. Revenge cycles can happen too with adults. When you feel slighted by your partner or by a friend, and then you're like, well, I'm fine, I'm just not going to talk to them anymore, or fine, I'm just not going to do this anymore, right? It's a sense of revenge. I'm feeling slighted, I'm feeling punished, and so now my eyes are set on revenge. I'm going to get you back. That's a sign, ding, flag, that there's some sense of punishment going on. There's a conflict to be resolved. There's a rupture that needs repair. And then the fourth outcome is retreat. And retreat is when you see someone lie or hide or shrink or be sneaky so that they don't get caught. And I think about a client of mine in this case that they had I feel like it was like 1 or 2 pieces of Halloween candy rule. So their child could have 1 piece or 2 pieces, I forget which. There's like a set limit around how many pieces of Halloween candy that they could have. And again, the child felt that this was imposed, that the child wasn't a part of it. This was just an arbitrary rule that was out. And so the child started to sneak up pieces of candy into her room. She hid them between her mattresses. And then the mom found it because there was ants in the room. And she was like, I thought we agreed, and da 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 da. And like, here her child is like, oh, okay, I'll have my 2 pieces with you, but then I'm going to sneak more upstairs so that I don't get caught. So this is a sign, again, that this is inconsistent on follow through. This is a punishment based model. This is calling out, saying, hey, we need to do something different. And the flip side to that, this is the solution is to start to build consistent follow through, start to learn through how to use natural consequences, start to learn how to bring children into the process. Inside of my own method, this is step 4. This is the accountability step. And inside of step 4, we can start to pull it back. Hey, what was the choice that was made? Was the child brought into it? Was this something that was decided together? Did they feel connected, seen, and heard in this? And if not, now I can start to hone in on where we focus on healing and repairing that rupture. And so for accountability, starting to build that consistent follow through and building consistent follow through, learning about natural consequences, learning how to implement natural consequences, and decreasing the use of punishments starts to invest in those traits of being a secure parent. The next trait of an insecure parent is unpredictable responses to stress. When we're thinking about stress, we can think about it like a stoplight: green, yellow, and red. That stands for green is acute levels of stress, yellow is episodic levels of stress, and red is chronic levels of stress. And each level of stress invites in different levels of support. So when we're thinking about acute stress is anything like going into a class, going about to start a big conversation. If you have a big work meeting or a presentation, something that is positive in nature, but it just pings up a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of stress, a little bit like apprehensive. What that asks for is encouragement and support, right? We just need a little bit of connection. We need a little bit of soothing, and we can go in and do it. I get little bouts of acute stress every time I go live on TikTok or Instagram. Every time I go live, right, to push record in the podcast. Every time I go into a group coaching call, I have these little bouts of acute stress, this little like, okay, oh, okay. Or afterwards, I'm like, whew, we did it. It's this moment of stress, and that stress is keeping me attuned. It's keeping me on guard. It's keeping me honed in. It's a good thing to have. The second level of stress, episodic stress. Episodic stress is bouts of acute stress over the course of a time. So it's any big transition. It could be a new child. It could be a move. It could be a transition into a different classroom. It could be painting the colors of your room a different color. It could be rearranging a room. These moments of episodic stress is connected to an episode. There is a clear start and a clear finish. We can start to say like, hey, if we're starting a new bedtime routine, it's probably going to be stressful for about 2 weeks. I call that out because it's like, oh, you're going to need extra support and extra skills for those next 2 weeks until that routine is set. Think about episodic stress when you're studying for a test. That's a long period of little bouts of acute stress. It's not negative in nature. It just requires different supports. And then the red zone of stress is chronic stress. And that's something that there has been no start and there is going to be no end, where we start to feel like, everything all the time is overwhelming. And when that happens, we're going to pink into intervention. That needs big intervention. It could be medication. It could mean therapy. It could mean respite care. It could mean getting into a space where there is high levels of intervention. It means something needs to change and something needs to be soothed. It's like alarms are going off. When we're identifying this stress and we're identifying where our levels are and what levels it requires of support, being proactive in that means that we start to use our coping skills before the stress level reaches critical level, which means going back to that thermostat, understanding how do we manage that thermostat. When it is hot outside, does our AC kick on? When it is cold outside, does our heat kick on? Are we able to start to use our coping skills to help regulate us? And are those coping skills adaptive or maladaptive? When I say adaptive or maladaptive, adaptive means helps us go with improvement. Maladaptive means it helps us, but it disimproves us. The opposite of that word right now. That's all I could think of was disimproves. Where's my brain? I don't know. Is it adaptive, meaning it helps us, or is it maladaptive, meaning that it hurts us? And when we think about adaptive measures, we're thinking about, when we're thinking about maladaptive measures, we're thinking about over controlling, right? That's when we start to get all of the reins, and we feel like we're holding all of the reins of all the different horses in our lives. And we're starting to just become very rigid in our approach. A maladaptive coping strategy too is to become passive, like totally just check out, like no big deal, it's whatever. When we flip that and we're thinking adaptive, we're thinking, how can we become active? How can we solve and get into spaces that helps us vent, helps us problem solve, helps us create different decisions, helps us with accountability? That's taking an active role in soothing our stress. Another is surrender, and surrender is letting go, but letting go of trying to change the circumstances, and instead leaning into what do we control within the circumstances. And when I think about this, I always like to use the visual of it raining outside. You don't control the rain, you control if you stay dry in the rain. And that's a sense of surrender. I can't change the weather, I'm going to surrender to that. But when I surrender to trying to change the circumstance, I can lean in and become empowered in what my role is on staying safe through that circumstance. I also think about in parenting, the circumstances are tantrums. You don't control your child's behavior. You don't control what upsets them. You don't control what calms them down. You do control you. You do control your role. You do control how you show up within their own storm. And when we can take a more active and more adaptive approach in that, then we can start to become a secure caregiver. We can start to show up in ways that create predictable responses to stress by understanding it. I like to say that this sense of stress, we're often sold these ideas of like stress-free tantrums, or stress-free back to school shopping, or stress-free bedtimes, right? We're sold this idea of stress-free. And so then we think like, oh, if I have stress, then I'm doing it wrong. And that's why I created this whole class, it was a whole stress series class. It was 5 classes digging into empowering parents in stress so that they can help their children navigate stress. I created that because stress is necessary to staying alive. Stress is important, and learning how to become empowered within your stress is a game changer. It's empowering. It's building confidence. It's helping you regulate yourself and others, so that now I can start to invest in that predictable quality of being a secure parent through knowing how to navigate my own stress. Another trait of an insecure parent is being emotionally invalidating. And when you look at emotional invalidation is when a person's emotional experiences are rejected, ignored, or judged. So, what does emotional invalidation sound like? Well, it sounds like the parent blaming challenging behavior on a perceived negative trait of a child. This could sound like after a child expresses anger for her mother's poor behavior, like, you took my toy, or you said I could get that, where the child is giving some sort of criticism or feedback to the parent then accuses her of overreacting or being a drama queen. Like, oh, you're just such a drama queen, right? It's when we're saying we're pinging back to the child, we're labeling their perceived poor behavior as some negative attribute of them. We could say things like, oh, why are you always so aggressive with your brother? You're such a bully. Oh my gosh, you're always so dramatic about homework. Why can't you just get it done? Are you seriously going to act like that right now? What's wrong with you? Why are you being so sensitive right now? It's not that big of a deal. We start to create this sense of invalidating where the parent is not connecting to the child's experience or what the child is going through. It can also sound like the parent struggles with experiencing a negative emotion and then discourages it within the child. For example, saying things like, just stay positive, or it's okay, it could be worse. Just be grateful for what you have, right? It's this like rejection of anything uncomfortable. We're like, I need you to be okay because if you're not okay, then I'm not okay. Go entering into that co-dysregulation where the child stress is now stressing the parent out. We then lean into invalidating. And the next is when the parent minimizes or contradicts the child's experience and shares the story of their story of events. So for example, when a child gets an A on the test and they didn't study for the excuse me, when the child gets an A on a test that they didn't study for, the parent says, well, it doesn't really count because you didn't work that hard for it. Math just comes easy to you. I think about this like when your child is just naturally gifted at something and then you discount it. You just like discount it for like, well, you didn't even work that hard. Now we're attaching like effort to grade. Or if a child doesn't study and they get a D, then we call them lazy. Well, you were just lazy, you didn't study, right? We're invalidating the child's experience by projecting our own on it. And then the final attribute of an invalidating parent that I want to cover today is that the parent downplays obstacles and challenges that their child are experiencing. For example, when the child is learning to master a simple task like pouring milk or tying shoes or picking up toys or coloring in the lines, a parent may explode and say things like, come on, this is easy, get with it. What's wrong with you? This isn't that hard, right? And so where they're saying like, I'm so frustrated with this mess. What's wrong with you? It's starting to create that invalidating experience for the child. So instead, that's why inside of the second class, inside of positive parenting class, I navigate right to it. I started to teach you how to become emotionally validating. How can we lead with connection? Why is connection always the first step? Why do we work to show up in ways that helps the child feel seen, safe, and soothed so that then they can navigate in to becoming proactive in how they're solving those problems, how we can now lean in to navigating those conflicts together. It's very hard to do that when the child is in defense or feeling rejected or feeling humiliated by their caregiver. So that's why the trait of becoming a secure parent is rooted in that being emotionally validating. And the final trait of, oh, nope, we've got two more. The fifth trait of an insecure parent is a lack of understanding and empathy. So we're thinking about empathy and understanding. I draw it out. It like pings me to attunement. And attunement is being able to attune, meaning understand someone else's lived experience, someone else's point of view, someone else's thoughts, hopes, dreams, and insights. And I draw it out this way. I think about it as two people. Person A sees blue, person B sees green. And so person A is going to say things like, well, I like blue. And person B is going to say things like, I like green. And when we are in a misattuned state, misattunement can come with thinking that I have to convince them. So if they like green, now I'm going to start to feel threatened. We're different. We need to be the same. And I'm going to start to say things like, well, you like blue to the other person, which invites them either to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I like blue. Or they're most likely going to be like, no, I like green, right? They're saying, no, see me, hear me, understand me. Don't try to convince me to eat the things. Don't try me to convince me to get the shot. Don't try to convince me to play with them. I'm telling you, I don't want to. I'm pushing back. So when we are misattuned, we're thinking like, okay, well, how do I get them to just do it? How do I convince them? That means that we are not aiming to seek to understand. We're actually aiming to convince them and trying to get them to see it how we see it. Because if we see it the same, then that's comfortable. Another trait of misattunement is when instead of having to convince them, then we think like, okay, well, I have to agree with them. Meaning like I have my own thoughts. So in this example, person A who likes blue is now trying to force themselves to like green. So they're like, even though I like blue, I'm going to try to make myself like green because then again, we're the same. Think about this when you're watching your kids like do something that is just uncomfortable to you and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're doing that. Oh, what are you doing? I guess I have to like it too, right? And then it's like, it's like inner conflict, right? That inner conflict is like ding ding ding, misattunement. You don't have to do this. You don't have to agree with them. Attunement and being attuned is seeking to understand them. So I like blue, you like green. I can start to communicate to you that I understand you without having to change myself. And for the other person, they're going to model that back. They're going to say, you like blue and I like green, meaning that they're now able to understand our inner world. So instead of trying to be seeking to be the same, we're now just seeking to understand, which doesn't mean that we see things the same way. It means that actually we're starting to practice and model empathy and understanding. So just like inside of building emotional intelligence, that class, we're going to start to foster a deep understanding of empathy. We're going to start to practice how can we do that? If it's challenging now, how can we start to do that? Where I, as the parent, think in blue and they, as the child, think in green, my role isn't trying to change them or trying to convince them or trying to take on what theirs is, but instead just seeking to connect and understand. That's validation. I can now validate their experience. Now for the final trait. The final trait of an insecure parent is that they make decisions for their children. And this pings me back into that ending entitlement class where I separate the definitions of entitlement and empowerment. Entitlement being the belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. And empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. And inside of this class, I dig into addressing your entitlement as the adult and caregiver first. So I call it out. Common tools of parenting with entitlement are bribes, yelling, threats, punishments, I told you so's, shame, treats, authority, carroting, or saying things like, I'm the parent. So seeing those moments and being like, okay, well, what tool am I going to go pull from? Okay, well, I can get them to do this because I'm the parent. It leads us into being like Danny DeVito in Matilda, where we now start to be like, oh, I'm big and you're small and I'm right and you're wrong, right? We're using those tools of childism, really, just seeing like, I have power and authority over you and I'm going to do that. And then that's the tools that they inherit and then they use them back to us. So instead of parenting with entitlement, we're going to start to parent with empowerment. Because we know now when we parent with those tools of entitlement, when we start to send those messages that I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're dumb. Now we can start to think about like, okay, when we use these tools, what is the message that is being sent to the child? In Danny DeVito, what is the belief about the child's abilities? What are the beliefs about conflict, disagreeing, and finding its resolution? What are the beliefs about establishing a sense of belonging together? When we think about that, it's like, whoa, yeah. Makes sense why some common outcomes of parenting with entitlement is a child that is demanding, or a child that is scared, or pressured, or resentful, or a child that becomes argumentative, or they retreat, they lie, they negotiate, or they start to outsource the work, right? Because they have been conditioned, they've been taught these tools of entitlement as well. So instead of making the decisions for the child, telling them what they have to do, when to do it, and how to do it, let's start to bring children into that process. That's when we start to invite children into the decision-making process. That's where we start to end entitlement and start to focus on empowering, using processes to help teach children proactive problem solving. Those are powerful skills that now they take those skills, they take the tools of building relationships, they take the tools of seeking to understand, they take the tools of empowering themselves and others. They start to take those into their future relationships because they're now starting to foster that sense of security. So, as a refresher, those 6 traits of an insecure parent that we dug into was when the parent is constantly moving boundaries or constantly zapping boundaries. We're going to lean instead to start to focus on how can we communicate, establish, and reestablish kind and firm boundaries. The trait of an insecure parent is inconsistent follow through, leaning hard on those punishments. Instead, we're going to now lean into using natural consequences and agreements and routines, starting to get in accountability for ourselves and others. The third was unpredictable responses to stress, often because we are overcome with stress. We don't have an understanding of stress. So instead, let's start to have predictable responses to stress by learning our own inner world and then helping children learn theirs. An insecure parent is emotionally invalidating. So the solution to that is now starting to become an emotionally validating caregiver. How can we start to show up that communicate in ways that help children feel seen, heard, and understood so that we can start to empower that sense of understanding and empathy instead of pulling from those insecure parenting traits of lacking understanding and empathy. And then the final, instead of making decisions for children, how can we bring children into the decision-making process? My classes and courses, the spaces that I help and hold for parents are all designed to help parents become secure caregivers, help them become the stabilized support for their children so that their children have the experience of having a place to safely land and to safely launch from. So in closing, I invite you to consider how predictable are your parenting responses? How secure do you feel in your parenting? Do you feel like the ever-moving trampoline, or do you feel confident in being that predictable, consistent, stable caregiver? And I hope you know now, on either end, there are ways to find support so that you feel more secure in parenting. If there are any shares at all, I highly encourage you to share your work. I love knowing how you take action from the work that I put out. So if you've taken notes or have any thoughts and takeaways, I want to know. And there are 3 ways to share. You can leave a review on Apple Podcast. You can share your thoughts and takeaways on social media and tag me. This one might be my favorite. And you can share your thoughts and insights inside our dedicated posts inside of our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. For now, I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for staying to the end. My mission in life is to help support parents in feeling supported and empowered in doing this work. This podcast, my Facebook community, and my programs and book club all help parents work through the phases of awareness, education, and practice. So now, if you've identified some ways that you want to dig into becoming and fostering that sense of security, I encourage you to sign up and take Positive Parenting Class Pass. Inside Positive Parenting Class Pass, you're going to get Positive Parenting 101. You're going to get the class on emotional validation, setting boundaries, ending entitlement, natural consequences, and apologizing. As my free gift to you, you also have access to Raising Respectful Kids, which is where we dig into your child's temperament, your parenting style, and the quality of attachment together. To get started today, you can visit bekindcoaching.com/classpass. Thank you all so much for being here and being a part of making this community so amazing. And I cannot wait to see you next week. Bye, friends.